Is the food industry making you sick? But why would they do that? What could possibly be their motivation? It couldn't be profit, could it? Profiteering at the expense of your health? No, no, no. But what about over time? Subtle changes in ingredients that add up, that accumulate, because cumulative changes can be very dramatic. And we've seen it in chocolate. And I'm looking at Nutella. And of course, Nutella started with a 50-50 balance between chocolate and hazelnuts. But then it descended into 65% sugar. And look at Dairy Milk, now owned by Kraft, and the changes of ingredients there. And the founder of Reese's Peanut Cups wrote to the board and said the ingredient list has changed and deteriorated to the point where I'm not going to eat it. But it's not just that. It's the number of ingredients and how many of those ingredients can you find in your grandma's larder. But I like the food I eat. We think literally the food industry is in an arms race to the bottom. But how does this happen? Slowly at first and then suddenly. And we've seen it in chocolate. And when we look across the food industry, we see the same things, the same repetition. Look, I've done 20 years in the chocolate industry. We've seen what the supermarkets have done to our chocolate, and we can do something about it. And we've developed a way to explain how to combat this deterioration, this shrinkflation, if you like, this shittification. And it's called eating the rainforest. And it's not a fad diet because you've been designed and evolved to do this for the last 11 million years. And it's recreating what we've lost and the botanical beauty that we find in the rainforest. So this is a chocolate diet that's based on the rainforest and the rainbow theory of human nutrition. And yeah, there is a plant hierarchy. Some plants are better for you than others. And our thesis is that the higher the plant is off the ground, broadly, the better it is for you. So just as we were evolved as monkeys to eat the food at the top of the canopy, so we are today. And you're going, this guy's full of, well, let me explain. Look, when you get hot, what do? You move into the shade of some tree. But what does a tree do when it gets hot? Because obviously it can't move. So it has to create a lot of protective polyphenols. And those polyphenols that protect it from the sun and protect it from pests are fantastic for us. Now, the current labels don't work. We don't think the normal labels that you find on food help. Like vegan, refined sugar is vegan. Vegetarian, a deep-fried cheese snack is vegetarian. Organic sugar is organic. Low fat is fat-free and it's flavored, but it's got lots of sugar. And even low sugar because it has a lot of petrochemicals in and flavorings. And it may contain maltitol and it may raise blood sugar and cause digestive upsets. So when we come down and try and figure out what's the easiest and simple guide we can give you as to what to eat, then it is eat the rainforest, eat the rainbow. And this is a core principle of human health. And what we're trying to do is mimic the diversity of the rainforest ecosystem in what you eat and in the biome in your stomach. Because after all, that's how we evolved. That's what we're designed for. So we have two complementary principles. First one, eat the rainbow. And this means maximize the diversity of natural pigments, be they red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. You're trying to cut out the monoculture of a white potato. Because if you've been to Peru, you'll see that the potatoes in Peru, they come like a rainbow. Why? Because they each contain different phytochemicals. The other philosophy is eat the rainforest, maximize biodiversity by regularly eating many different edible plant species, nuts, seeds, herbs, spices, and fruits, rather than just relying on a small number of stable crops. When I say eat diversely, I find that people often will eat, well, I'm going to have pasta one day, pizza the next, and bread the next. That's not diversity. They're the same source of carbohydrates. So our philosophy is aim high. Eat the canopy plants first. And look, this is not rocket science. The theory draws support from several established scientific fields. The first one is obviously nutritional diversity. And research consistently shows that dietary diversity increases the range of vitamins, minerals, fiber, and bioactive compounds in your food. As we come on to explain, diversity doesn't mean pizza, pasta, and bread. It means polyphenols, flavonoids, carotenoids, glucanates, terpenes, alkaloids, and betalains. No single food supplies all of them. But if you mix in our rainforest and rainbow diet, which we're going to call the chocolate diet, you're going to get a microbiome ecology that is like the Amazon. A diverse plant diet supports a more diverse gut microbiome. And this is super important because it's all about the immune function, and it's all about benefiting the short-chain fatty acids, reducing inflammation, and increasing your metabolic resilience. Now, we also know that fiber feeds these bacterial species, but your pasta, pizza is not going to feed those bacterial species because they don't have enough fiber. Our rainforest and rainbow diet does. What's this guy on about? What's he talking about? Let me get into the detail now. So hang in there because this is important. And the big food industry don't want you to know this. Phytochemical synergy means that plants evolved millions of defensive chemicals which have beneficial impacts on humans, i.e. they've got antioxidants or they're epigenetic. And these can be the curcumin, the catechins, the lycopene, and all these incredibly complicated words. And eating these plant species exposes the body to a wider biochemical library. Now, let's just go back essentially to the world of the chimpanzee, because that's where we evolved from. And if you think about it, we were designed to eat these canopy fruits and foods, whereas many modern diets rely heavily on a very limited number of staples. And those staples are generally ground-based grass. And you have to ask your question, why is that? Because they're easy to grow. They're monoculture. You can grow them in massive quantities with agricultural farming. Wheat, rice, corn, potatoes, and soy. That is the staple of a Western diet. It's not the staple of diet that you were designed to eat. So let's use for a moment an ecological analogy and think about how rainforests are among Earth's most resilient ecosystems because they have high biodiversity. And similarly, a nutritionally diverse diet may create the same resilience in our metabolism. And that's not a big surprise. Think about it. You're trying to recreate essentially the Amazon diversity in your own microbiome, in your own gut, because that drives immunity and antioxidant defenses. When I say eat the rainbow, of course I'm talking about the different colors in food because they roughly correspond. It's a shorthand version to the different dominant phytochemicals in food. Of course, chocolate's a prime example. It's already a rainbow color. It has lots of antioxidants. But take a red tomato or a watermelon because they've got lycopene in. And take an orange carrot or a pumpkin because they've got beta-carotene in. And take a pepper because they've got lutein in. And take green kale because of chlorophyll. And blueberries, anthocyanins. Take white garlic, allicin. All these are super important chemicals you just don't get. But there's a different angle which I want to bring up, which is aim high. Look at the canopy. That's where you came from. That's where you evolved from. And there's a very good explanation for this. Think about a cocoa tree. It's been there for 100 years or so. It's survived a lot of hot weather. It's survived a lot of pests. survived a lot of diseases. It's invested in its seeds, all that botanical defenses and knowledge. A grass which grows and dies annually cannot possibly have the same level of nutritional value and antioxidant power that a tree that's had to compete for 100 years. And that's why we're very focused on cocoa, on nuts, on fruits, on coffee, which obviously comes from a bush. And that's why when we go into a coffee shop and we're surrounded by grasses, buns, almond croissants, that's all grass. That's all sugar-based grass with very, very high GLI. But if you go higher, look to the canopy, look to the rainforest, you're going to find foods with incredibly high antioxidant levels. And in chocolate, of course, because you can take chocolate from 100-year-old trees and the chocolate itself is 20 meters off the ground, that's by definition, according to this theory, going to have a very, very high antioxidant level. And we measure that by calling it an ORAC. So when we create a framework for what kind of food is really powerful and what the best possible diet could be, we use a number of metrics. One is called the ANDI, which measures the nutrient. Another is looking at the antioxidant quantity. Another one looks at fiber. Another one looks at GLI. And another one looks at the overall calorific level. And when you measure that, you're going to find that the tree-borne fruits and seeds and nuts are where you get the most nutritional benefit, measured across that nutritional density, measured across the antioxidant level, and measured across the fiber. And so that's why we say aim high, aim for the canopy, eat foods that are grown in the rainforest with biodiversity, and to the extent you can, reduce or avoid those grasses that we've talked about. But there's one other criteria that I think is really important. A lot of our foods we discover, and we see it in chocolate as well, is that the ingredients, be they caffeine, be they vanillin, they're synthetic. And when you see synthetic flavorings and emulsifiers, you know that it's not just from the ground that these products have come. They come from petroleum. That's underground. And this is why the hierarchy of foods really matters, because you don't want to be tasting petroleum products. You don't want to be in the diesel industry when you're talking about your diet. And this is why our philosophy, what we're going to call the chocolate diet, is all about the rainbow colors and the rainforest diversity and aiming high, eating plants that cannot be forced into the monoculture of the petroleum industry.